I think writing queries, creating dashboards is definitely going to be easier and less relevant for analysts. What I think a lot of people underestimate is if you expect a business user to use a chatbot now to basically get metrics out of a database, the table doesn't on its own know with the technical fields what the data is you're looking for. What it requires is the semantic layer, and what it requires is all of the contextual information captured in the knowledge graph. And that knowledge graph and layer needs to be maintained and defined first by someone. A lot more analysts, they will become translators in a different way. They're not translating data into insights anymore, but they're translating business language into table structures and semantic statements.
What's up, everyone? Today we have the pleasure of sitting down with Tiankai Feng, Data and AI Strategy Director at Thoughtworks and the author of Humanizing Data Strategy, Leading Data with the Head and the Heart. He's also spent over 6 years at Adidas as Senior Director of Product Data Governance and Director of Digital Analytics. In this episode, we explore the comeback of data quality, how to organize data teams to improve marketing collaboration, how to use shadowing to fix broken marketing alignment, how NLP is changing the data analyst role, and how composable data management works in marketing. All that and a bunch more stuff after a super quick word from one of our awesome partners. This episode is brought to you by MoEngage and their new Warehouse Native CEP, which revolutionizes the way data should be seamlessly fetched, analyzed, and activated. Now you can use MoEngage Cloud Data Sync to sync your warehouse data with MoEngage and use it to segment audiences or personalize messages without any development. Just set and forget. Use MoEngage warehouse segments to create segments on your warehouse data without moving underlying events, properties, or proprietary segmentation logic, and activate them directly on MoEngage. Using warehouse data analytics, brands can also directly generate insights from their warehouse data. Your long search solution for seamless data sync, smarter segmentation, dynamic personalization, and delightful customer experiences ends here. Warehouse Native CEP from MoEngage, making it easy, smart, and secure. Learn more at moengage.com. Tiankai, thanks so much for your time today. Really excited to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
I read your book cover to cover. Can't really say cover to cover because it was the ebook version. I got a chance to search after I read it for specific questions here. So excited to talk to you about this overlap between marketing operations, marketing technology, and the more data operations, data professional side of the role. I'm curious because you actually started your background in marketing, right? Like before your illustrious career in data management and governance, you spent a lot of time at a marketing and BI boutique agency. Like your LinkedIn said, digital strategy, market research, brand marketing, social media. Eventually you got into more performance management projects, but you also had a short stint as a part-time head of marketing for the Germany chapter of the Data Management Association. Fun one just to get us started here. Like what makes data plus marketing one of the best matches out there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think what I always felt like, even growing up, was I loved advertising and I loved to have the fun with it, like all of the cliches looking at advertisement, but also understanding why it makes me want to buy things, right? That whole feeling. And I always felt like there needs to be some logic behind it. Like even when I was growing up, I thought like that has to be decoded somehow. And of course, there's science behind it. Science is a way of data as well, of course, that you're collecting. But when I then chose to study and choose a major, basically, I decided for doing a mix of marketing and database systems as basically my segue into trying to do both. And that really worked out. And that made me actually start my career in marketing analytics and analyzing marketing data. And I always loved the two worlds, right? On the one hand side, marketing as being seen as this creative field and everything basically being there to have ideas on how to convince people about being a better version of themselves, et cetera, et cetera. Well, on the other hand, you have all these numbers and metrics and everything, and you try to make sense of it all, of how you can improve it even more. And basically balancing that right side brain and left side brain, right? That kind of always made me feel like this is the best way to do it, right? You have a lot of thoughts, you have a lot of gut feeling. What if you could actually rely on proof on one hand side to make better decisions, but build on it, then be creative and actually be great at storytelling and sell things and so on and so on. So yeah, that for me has always been the best mix, I think. And I mean, I would even say nowadays, working on data, a lot of the collaboration comes from marketing your team properly and marketing your function properly too, right? So even now I'm applying a lot of the marketing techniques I learned in the past to convince my stakeholders to work with me and have less resistance about trying to work with me. So all in all, it was a good investment, and I still really, by heart, I'm still love marketing. Right, I'm a marketeer.
Very cool. It's cool to hear that the creativity was one of the inspiring actions to get you to study marketing and dive more into that space. You obviously talk a lot about that in your book, like the whole creativity side of
Yeah.
being human and not just the other side of your brain and focusing on the data. Creativity is a big part of your life. Obviously, in art, you're a musician.
Hmm.
You love rapping and singing. I checked out a lot of your raps and the stuff that you've got on YouTube and some of the TED Talks that you started on the piano.
Hmm.
In one of your songs, you have a verse that says, "If data is the force, data governance is the Jedi Council." And I loved
Yes.
it, and it made me think, all right, like what is marketing operations or marketers in that analogy? Like, who do you think is the marketing operations or the marketing team that's activating that data that's been governed and clean and like actually growing the business? Are we the Jedi Knights, the trained specialists who wield the force in a practical way to accomplish missions, or maybe Rebel Alliance, like the scrappy, resourceful team that builds systems and strategies to beat the Empire? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. I do my initial intuitive answer would be both, depending on the situation, right? Because sometimes you need to be the Jedi Master to actually fight the good fight, but
Mm,
then sometimes you have to be against the mainstream too, and do something that maybe not is the most popular way of doing it, but you do it anyway because in your heart you believe it's right. So that kind of way, I feel like both applies. But nowadays, I think just given the maturity also of Martech maybe as an industry and of being basically a field to work in, it's more Jedi Knights because there's more mastery in there now, right? And there's more experience and more best practices to be shared. Whereas in the past, it felt a little bit more rebellious, right? Like you were the underdog and it felt like not many people were working in it, so everyone tried to make sense of it. But now with like years of experience, it just feels a bit more mature. I think
mm.
that's why I would tend towards more of a Jedi Master analogy.
Very
Yeah.
cool. It makes a fun way to create a header image for this section of the interview. Folks watching on YouTube, like there's like a video chapter image for each of them, and I use them for the blog post too. So oftentimes I'm just like trying to think of creative ways, and it's like a balance scale or it's like a flashlight or a loop. And I think that I don't think I've done a lot of Jedi Knight type
Yes, now you
imagery.
have
So
the one opportunity to do that. Go ahead.
love it. I grew up in SaaS startups where, there wasn't a data team yet.
Mhm.
This is going back like 14 years now. Data didn't really have an owner at that time. Like the technical tracking components of data, customer data, and like the product to marketing tool integrations were a mix of ownership between the engineers that were building the product
Right.
and the marketing team that was, using an iPaaS tool or trying to dive into API documentations and make sense of like REST APIs to connect stuff together. Things have changed dramatically now.
Mhm.
Even in most startups, like there is a data team or at least one data person. I know you
Right.
talk about that in your book a lot, like the one person data team.
Yeah.
Um, but I want to ask you about like people, process, tech, and data. That's typically the mandate of marketing operations or like the revenue operations team within a company. The data component is really interesting there because in some companies I worked at, marketing is like marketing data is owned by marketing operations. But
Mhm.
in a lot of other companies, bigger companies specifically, it's fully transitioned to a central data team. They own BI, they own all of analytics. If you're the marketer and you want to build a new dashboard or track a new metric, you have to log a ticket. But some teams have a decentralized approach where there's like a marketing analyst that's embedded and sits on a GTM team. What's the best format? And curious your thoughts there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a good question, but there is unfortunately not a one size fits all answer to it, right? It really depends on an organization, on the maturity, on the culture of an organization, on what is the right setup. But normally, I would say, right, wherever the decisions are being made, try to be as closely as possible there, right? And but you have to balance that proximity to the business decisions and the actions that you're taking to improve the business with consistency and managing equally all of the data efforts that are happening, right? And this is the usual trade-off between centralizing or decentralizing your data people and data experts into either all being centralized and being consistent with each other, but then having that hurdle to actually work with a business because they're so far away from them.
Mm.
Or everyone sits in the different business functions, but they never talk to each other. So all data experts do whatever they want and it's chaos. So finding that balance is really hard, right? And I think basically trying to then intentionally find the right balance is the right thing. However, I think the only right thing to consider, and I talk about that in my book, right, is more about the mindset itself rather than actually where you sit and what the operating model is, right? As long as you have shared goals, it really shouldn't matter in what function you're sitting or what team you're sitting. But if you have goals that are shared and everyone contributes to the same goals, then it's in everyone's interest to work together, right? And then you don't have to use it as an excuse anymore, right? To say I sit in a different team or I sit in the same team to justify not collaborating or collaborating. You just want to collaborate anyway because it's the right thing to do, right? You cannot do it alone anyway. So let's team up. We reach the goal together and we all benefit from it. So yeah, there's a lot to think about there regarding incentives, collaboration, culture, but that should be the ultimate goal to actually have everyone work towards the same goals and not goals that are conflicting with each other.
Yeah, yeah, makes a lot of sense. What advice would you have for marketing operations folks or marketers when they collaborate with their data counterparts on the data team? Obviously, the data teams is a lot more technical. They're way more data literate, but they probably lack some of the business understanding that the marketers do, especially the marketing application understanding side of things. I know you talk about this in your book, but I'm curious to get your advice there on like empathy for the data team.
Absolutely. I would say, let me first describe that a good data professional would ask you for the business context proactively, right?
Hmm.
They would try to understand you first before they're trying to make you do things or before they ask you for certain input that you don't know the context of, right? Like, why are you
Right.
asking me all these questions? But if they don't do that, right, then if you are the one who is marketing, working in a marketing function, then you could also try proactively sharing that context with them, right? You can ask them if they are willing to understand you first before they ask all these weird questions or ask you to all these different things. You would wish for them to understand you first, so then they know what you're going through and what your day to day looks like. So you speak at least a little bit the same language, right? And this is, as you rightfully pointed out, about empathy, right? It's not me against you and not having the intention of why are you against me and why are you doing all of these things to me, but rather let me try to help you understand me and I want to understand you too. And if we understand each other, then we can work together no matter what, because at least we get each other now, right? But that's a much more human thing than anything. It's not even just work related. It's generally, if we understand each other, we just work together better, right? Having just shared passions for things, having a common understanding, that's just very normal. And it's basic human connection that we want to have.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. It makes me think of a couple of situations in my in-house career where it wasn't always the data team, but marketers often needs to work with engineers, and the engineers will work on the data team, the engineering team, the product team, or sometimes even like IT, security
Right.
systems, and governance, right? And there's often a ton of like overlap when it comes to customer data and the more technical side of things, like email deliverability. We talk about that on the show a lot. You have to have, DNS records in there to do your
Hmm.
DKIM authentication, and that overlaps with IT and governance and security. And there's often like an understanding from a marketing application side of things that this is the best practice based on my experience, based on the research that I've done. We should have multiple subdomains for how we send emails. We'll
Right.
separate the shady stuff that our sales team is doing from our corporate domain to save that reputation and not affect it. So I need this subdomain, that subdomain, and they're like, I've faced a lot of resistance sometimes with engineers when I enter the discussion and I'm like trying to be empathetic about it and saying like, you guys don't have all the application knowledge that I do in the marketing technical world. Here's everything I know. Here's all the context. Here's the background on why I want to do this. But I've often faced like specific resistance from folks because it's a technical area and they think that they own it and they think they understand the world well enough that they have, an opinion to share, and we have like back and forth and they don't agree with the decision. Like,
Right.
what advice do you have? Because like your first answer was just like, just share the context and explain what you're trying to do. But what advice do you have when, after you share that context, there's disagreement on where to go and what are the next steps?
It's a really interesting one, um, because even if we just think about the general split between business and tech, right? Then of course, business people are the business experts and tech are the tech experts, right? But neither of them can work without the other either, right? So
Hmm.
like a tech, if it's not being used for business, it doesn't have any value.
Right.
And when the business person doesn't use the tech, they're gonna have a really bad time because they're not enabled in any way, right? So it should be in their natural interest to work together. So basically, disagreeing with each other is a little bit under the underlying problem with that is that you are undermining each other's expertise. It does feel a little bit like, who are you to tell me that I don't understand tech enough, right? But in
Hmm.
reality, I am a tech expert, but you still need to use my technology. Actually, we should make it work, right? And if we haven't considered each other's point of views yet, then now is the time to consider it because in the end, we need each other to be considerate enough to actually basically work together. So that that whole principle of always assuming positive intent, right? Which is one of the
Hmm.
principles of going through life, I would say, and being a positive person, is easily then mistaken for always assume bad intention, right? So the moment you're saying something that's a disagreement, you are interpreting it as you are actually evaluating my expertise, whereas it's just a disagreement on this is not how I do things. Can we please work together to make this work for both sides? So if we can change it around, right, to say disagreement is a way to find common ground, and it's not about focusing on what makes us different, but it's focusing on what actually we have in common, then maybe that can lead to a better outcome.
Mm. Yeah, I feel like healthy disagreement is something that comes up a
Exactly.
lot in your book, and actually, like, checked out a lot of your posts on LinkedIn, and one of your most famous posts, you went, like,
Yeah.
mega viral on that one. You shared, an image from Marketunist to
Yeah.
kind of illustrate
With the
this
lemmings.
data contradiction element.
Yeah.
You basically wrote about, like, how agreement doesn't always mean that you're on the right path, and you
Exactly.
emphasize that, like, healthy disagreement and psychologically safe environments leads to better collective decisions, and like, you when approached constructively, obviously. What about, like, when data reveals a narrative that contradicts a business team's creative vision, marketing maybe? Like, how do you present in that boardroom with the marketing team, like, without crushing their creative enthusiasm?
Yeah, I mean, that part actually is really about storytelling, I would say, right? And ironically, the ones who are actually expert in storytelling, who are the creative people, right? They are the ones who need to be told a story now that makes them not explode or getting really upset about it. And all of a sudden, you have to tell the right story to a bunch of expert storytellers. So that makes it very tricky. But all in all, though, right? The thing is, again, that the facts are contradicting what they came up with is the fact and what happened. But there's what you can communicate and how you communicate it. There's always a choice, right? And the what is probably already fixed because this is the message you need to tell, but you can always choose how to tell them.
Mm,
And again, this is where I feel like also having worked with marketers that they of course want to be valued for their creativity and for their ideas and what they came up with the whole concept. If the data is now basically contradicting that, then the message shouldn't be you were wrong, but the
mhm,
message should be, is there a way how we can actually tweak your creative so it actually fits better to the findings that I have, right? My audience actually doesn't like this. They actually enjoy this one more. Maybe we could change the testimonial to this one. Or the audience we found out is spending more time on this social media channel than the other one. Maybe we should not plan so much on this channel, but the other one. But giving actionable guidance, right? That is not saying stretch the whole thing. It doesn't make any sense. But more like constructive criticism, right? As in the facts are saying that this and this. So our suggestion would be knowing how much work you put into it, could we tweak it in that direction instead? And this has a higher likelihood that it should work. So yeah, basically that takes conscious storytelling, right? You need
mm.
to actually spend some time and tell our story, right? But I would always say, even if that takes a lot of time, because that's just what people complain to me about, right? Why should I invest so much time in storytelling? It's just a table. They can read it themselves, and now I'm creating all this PowerPoint around it, right? But the thing is, if you don't tell a story and you just show them the table and they realize what's happening, then cleaning up and repairing that relationship might take a lot more time. than the one
Hmm.
you invested in the beginning in storytelling. So I would say rather invest there and try to be proactive in maintaining the good relationship and being constructive and being a good collaborator than actually having to fix it afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great advice. I think one of the most important stories to tell as someone who's like reported and measured marketing activity throughout his whole career is like one of the most important to tell is it's okay to have negative results. Like not every campaign has to
That is
be a
true.
massive win. And sometimes the results, the insights that we uncover from the losses and the misses end up being just as important because from those come a better campaign idea. And so we switched the narrative from it being like, "Your campaign really sucked," to, "Here's what we learned about why this didn't necessarily resonate with folks," or, "This is the methodology that we use to measure it. It's not perfect. Here are the holes in it, like, we have a confidence interval on it, like, we don't think that multi-touch attribution is the perfect way to measure this, but based on the trackable touch points," like, so there's a way to kinda spin it because, yeah, I think marketers are very sensitive when it comes to the creative side of the gig, but, yeah, I love your answer.
Absolutely. But I have to also say, maybe to that note, right? There's a difference of when you use data in a campaign lifecycle, right? Because
Mm,
if you use it earlier during the creational conceptuation of a campaign and it's more about consumer insights, so you are still in the planning phase, then you have a choice to listen to it, right? It doesn't have to be bad. You haven't performed yet, right? You haven't run the campaign yet, so you can still change your mind
mm,
and try to do things better, and that looks good. But if you have run the whole campaign, you decided to not listen to any data or ignore data at all, and now you're performing badly, not even the data can save you, right? So we cannot magically create better metrics for you just because you didn't listen up front. And this is why, right, as the earlier you can actually work with data teams or data in your campaign lifecycle, the better off you would be, right? Because then, um, ideally, you worked on data-informed decisions, right? And then they turn out to be good, and you actually have better KPIs and metrics as well. Yeah, but it's not always the case, and this is where the tricky thing comes from, right? To try to look good, but the data doesn't support it, and then you have this bad situation.
yeah, yeah,
Mm.
we try to empathize, like, not hiding your wins and only showcasing or not hiding your losses and only showcasing the wins, but it's easier said than done in
Of
this
course.
economic climate, right? Like, you don't wanna just shout about the losses, but, it's a tricky
Exactly.
one for sure. What comes to mind if I ask you, like, what's the most valuable disagreement in a business context that you've lost? And how did it change your perspective or your approach to cross-functional collaboration?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think um yeah, I would say the most disagreements I had, without having to be specific about names and brands that I work with, might get sensitive, were about the balance between commercial success and doing the right thing societally or
Mm,
sustainably, right? Whereas I would find consumer insights that are supporting that people want to be greener now and they want to be better and they want to support certain minorities more and they want to have a good cause now behind things. Whereas on the other side, they decide to just put everything on discount and to still choose the cheapest way of producing things to sell them in the easiest way. And those were always the disagreements kind of that I was facing. But I realized that there's always a moment, and a momentum, right, for these kinds of conversations.
mm,
And I cannot keep on being just very stubborn about certain things that I'm trying to make, because otherwise I come across as, yeah, hard to work with, right? Difficult
mm.
to work with, basically, because I cannot accept a no, right? And I just keep on pushing and pushing and pushing until it doesn't really end well. So I think the one thing I learned about it is that sometimes it's not about the decision being wrong, it's just not the right time for the right decision. And I learned that if I bring it up at a different time when actually things people are in a different mood and timing wise it's better, that the right decision might be taken much more likely. And just because I'm like running out of time or I feel like I need to urge a decision now, it doesn't mean the rest of the world can follow me, right?
Mm.
So I think that is the main learning I had from that.
In your book, you talk a lot about advocating for and spending time with other teams to
Yeah.
understand their world when there is conflict like this, and when you do have disagreement, because maybe you have this theory or this like innate idea, and after you've actually spent time in their worlds, you've opened up to like your idea maybe not being perfect and not having all the information to kind of like come up with the basis of your idea. You shared an example in your book. You also talked about this on LinkedIn, also about shadowing a brand strategy team.
hmm
You did this 1 day per week. Forget what company this was at, but talk to us about this idea and how you actually operationalized it.
Yeah, the premise is simple, right? For me to be able to understand my stakeholders or my collaborators, I need to see their day to day. But I cannot expect them to just block days of their own calendar just to teach me about it, right?
Hmm.
The easiest way probably is to just observe them. So shadowing them in that case is probably best way for me to just observe, capture, and have the takeaways that I need from observing what's going on to then know what they're going through in the day to day. Practically, that means time commitment too, right? Because on those days that I'm shadowing someone else, I'm actually not doing anything else but observing them. So actually, you need that commitment from your leadership, or you need at least the buy-in into the way of working that you choose to do to actually do that. But again, right, I mentioned that before, the time you don't invest actually in understanding them turns out to be much worse afterwards because there's a lot of more conflict that you need to deal with that is all costing a lot more time. So the 1 day that maybe you spend per week for, let's say, 3 months turns out to be preventing all of the issues afterwards because you understand each other now finally perfectly, right? That could be a good balance, right? And a good return on investment in the end. But we need to think about it this way too, right? Like creating intentional understanding for each other and to spend the time and the efforts to do that, that takes the right mindset. And culturally, I think we should just go towards it more. The bigger organization is, the more anonymous you can get, right? And
Mm.
then the bigger the organization is, the also you feel there's so much more you can do, and that creates actually the fatigue that we think we have a lot of choices, and then we focus on nothing, but we focus on everything, right? We just
Mhm.
like, I have to be for everyone there, and then you start everything but don't finish anything. So if we can go back a little bit to focusing on specific stakeholders and collaborators, I think that might help.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Oftentimes, marketing ops teams and marketing technologists are in a similar like collaborative role as the data folks, and
Right.
we deal with like sales, we deal with data, we deal with products, and sometimes when we're doing like life cycle stuff lower in the funnel, we deal with a bunch of other people too. And so like there's a lot of context
Right.
switching in kind of your answer there, and I definitely empathize with that. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Knack. I have the amazing pleasure of chatting with some of the greatest minds in marketing operations, but you'd be shocked at how many of them have the same issues when it comes to their campaign creation process. They're dealing with things like scaling, personalization, keeping assets on brand, render testing emails, working in rigid templates, and worst of all, having to hand code emails. But many of the leaders in the space are using Knack to eliminate these headaches. Knack is a no code email and landing page creation platform that covers initial campaign requests right until the sync to your marketing automation platform. Knack improves the whole campaign creation process by bringing the building, optimization, testing, collaboration, and also translation functions all in a single spot. So you don't have to jump around and coordinate feedback between a bunch of different people or wait on developers for very simple edits. Because at the end of the day, marketing ops folks want to focus on process and efficiency. Marketers want to focus on creativity, and Knack makes sure you get both and then some. Check them out at knack.com. That's KNAK, and tell them we sent you.
This episode is brought to you by Revenue Hero. You've invested thousands in your marketing funnel, targeted the right ICP, spent weeks A/B testing, and optimized for conversion at every step. Finally, a high-intent prospect fills out your demo form, and then nothing. Your nurtured lead sits in a queue while you chase them with, "How's Thursday at 2 p.m.?" Meanwhile, your competitor is already on a discovery call. That's not just frustrating, that's revenue walking away. With Revenue Hero, you can qualify, route, and book leads with the right rep, so your team can start real conversations right away. For the ops folks listening, Revenue Hero syncs meeting data to your CRM, auto credits no-shows, recalibrates when reps go on vacation, and has a ton of smart features you won't find anywhere else. If you're spending to drive demand, don't lose it at the last mile. Visit revenuehero.io/demo today.
One thing that jumped out when I was researching your background and some of your experience was the amount of time you spent with marketing teams with big names like Coca-Cola, Volkswagen, and Adidas. You were 6 years at Adidas. What's maybe like take us to some of those like discussions or like campaigns? And the question I have for you, but like feel free to just take us through that experience. Like what's the most counterintuitive data insight that you've defended that marketing teams at some of these big companies initially rejected, but later embraced, maybe because of your storytelling ability?
Right. I think I can answer that very easily. The insight sometimes was you have too many campaigns going on at the same time
Mm.
and you are over the customer. And the reaction usually to that is, no, but all of our products are important. We cannot stop any of the campaigns. And because everyone, the product you mentioned before, everyone invested a lot of time on coming up with these campaigns, and now they're all ready to run it. But you cannot run, let's say, 10 campaigns in 1 week because the customer will be completely overwhelmed by how many things you're marketing at the same time, right? Um, and this was counterintuitive for the marketers, and it actually pointed to a much bigger problem because it wasn't really convincing individual marketers. It was they having not aligned with each other and synchronized the calendars to actually have a proper sequence of campaigns, but rather just decided to put it all in one and using multiple tens of social media channels all over the place to all send different messages. That I had to basically use that insight multiple times, right, to try to explain. Now, look, even the survey data says that the respondents don't know what you're standing for because
Mm.
it's just all over the place. So is that kind of thing. That happened a few times, I would say, because on an individual level, then the better you get and the longer you work in that area, the more convincing you get, and you know how to tell people data insights, right? But once it's actually about them not being aligned with each other across different departments, then it gets blown up, right? All of a sudden, it's a big collaboration problem, and that was an interesting one always.
Very cool. So almost like a frequency
Yeah.
discussion there. Like you mentioned survey results, like what other mechanisms came into play to being able to like surface that data to the marketing team, say like, hey, we're like inundating our potential customers with messages, we're confusing them. Like how did you prove that to them?
Yeah, I mean, I think survey data was the most obvious one. A lot of time when I spent in that boutique agency that you mentioned at the beginning was actually combining traditional market research data with digital sources like social media
Mm.
data, social listening, web analytics, and paid media research, and these kind of things all together. So that's how we could combine the learnings into have proper consideration of comprehensive consumer insights, right? Um, but also the search behavior, for example, on Google, right? You could just check for competitors how they are being searched for specifically for the newest products. Whereas for the brand that you're working with, all of a sudden it's like all equally little of different products that are not all competing at all with the competitor in terms of search
Mm.
volume, right? And search volume, we all know, is a big indicator for interest. And you basically have distributed all of the interest into much smaller chunks for different things, instead of focusing on bigger things that you stand for to then create that interest or hype or hotness for your brand, right? That's kind of the thing.
Very
Mm,
cool. Yeah, that's it's always a balance between the qualitative stuff and the
exactly.
quantitative side of marketing measurement. In your book, you actually talk a lot about this concept of being data informed versus data driven and making decisions there. And you highlight the balance between human expertise and analytical insights. What are your thoughts on like the hype with AI right now and how marketers and data teams determine which campaign decisions should remain human led versus machine led? Like we're seeing a ton of that. It's been around forever. Like ML's been in marketing for decades,
Yeah.
and like this whole like send time optimization, figuring out channel optimization, the right time to send a message. Like that tech's been around for a long time. But now it's getting a bit easier. Like AI agent orchestration is kind of like blowing up the hype cycle. And a lot of folks are asking themselves, like, what needs to remain human led and what can we just kind of like give to the machine? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah. I mean, I think I still stand to the point that I think we live right now in the time where a lot of the tedious routine and recurring tasks can be automated and very well automated by AI, right? And even with AI agents, the whole premise is that you predefine patterns and that based on certain rules and patterns, an AI agent will do exactly the same stuff over and over again, depending on what you're asking it to do, right? But I always think that that means that we can actually shift our tedious work and recurring manual work to AI more. That should give us theoretically more space to think, make better decisions, and be more creative on a human way, right? And that is, I hope, where it goes to also in marketing, for example, right? Where if we don't have to spend time manually filling in paid media cost overviews anymore. I mean, that's a bad example, but you know what I mean, right?
Mhm.
Then we can actually think about what generally is what we should do with paid media. Maybe there's some innovation kind of idea that we have on what to do with the paid media channels, et cetera, to do it in a better way, right? And so jobs will change. Certain jobs that were only operational before might move and being replaced by AI, but that makes us all rely then hopefully more on our brain again and our heart, right? And we should then all again put more time into thinking and making the right decisions.
Very cool. I love that at your current company, your role is focused on both AI and data
Yes.
governance and the strategy behind that. There's obviously a ton of overlap, like one doesn't happen without the
Exactly.
other. And like the empathy side of that for marketing operations folks is that we are often like an underfunded team within the
Right.
marketing teams, like 28-person marketing team and like one marketing ops person doing like all the Martech implementation, supporting the people in the process. And, a lot of folks just like look at the data and they're just like, why is this like data not fixed? Why is this
Right.
data dirty? Why do we have duplicates everywhere? And it's like, I'm one person supporting 20 freaking humans and there's a
Yeah,
ton on my plate. And so AI now is kind of changing that discussion a little bit.
for
And
sure.
marketing ops folks finally now have this like thing that's helping us and supporting us when all we want to do is clean the data. Like all we want to do is sanitize the data in the CRM and make sure none of it's duplicated. Now other people care about it. Like it was so hard to go and chat with like senior leaders and be like, this thing that we're pitching to do next quarter is cleaning our data and we're deduplicating records and we're doing ID resolution and we're going to combine all these sources. And like the senior teams are just like, why do we care about this? Like,
That's
how
true.
much revenue is that going to give us? Now we can finally say it is going to give us revenue because here are the AI applications that we can put on top of that clean data. What are your thoughts there? You see a lot of overlap with what you do day to day?
Absolutely. I think this is really the key. I also this is I call it the comeback of data quality
Hmm.
because before data quality was not sexy. Everyone was focusing on it, everyone complained about it, but nobody wanted to take care of it, right? And now that AI is there and everyone realizes that AI with bad data is just bad AI, right? All of a sudden the focus is much bigger. It's like we are bad data quality is hindering all of our innovation here. And if we cannot compete with the rest of the world in AI, then what are we doing? This needs to be the highest priority all of a sudden.
Mm.
And that puts a lot of pressure on it, right? And going back to the basics and actually focusing on data quality again is the right move, I would say, right? I have to say that also a lot of, especially in the Gen AI space, right? There's a lot of pre-trained models that only needs the context of your organizational data and doesn't need to be trained completely by your own organizational data. So there's always a certain impact that you need to deal with. But even then, still, right? You want to tailor it to your organization. That means you need to provide it in the high quality contextual data that you have for any AI model to probably work. So yeah, absolutely. It's now that everyone wants to do it, we all get to do data quality again. So that's good for us.
Data quality is time to shine again. We're finally
Yes,
getting our time in the sun.
exactly, exactly.
It's funny that like most is obviously like more than one team, especially in bigger companies that owns data quality. But like, marketing operations folks, the acronym is like MOP often, like MOP. And the icon for a lot of folks
Right.
is a mop bucket because we're cleaning data and we're in the background and folks don't really care about what we do. Now all of a sudden it's like, this is important work. Like our
Yeah.
AI isn't great without marketing ops focusing on the marketing data side. But you always have a bigger mandate of this for data governance for the whole company. Curious to ask you your thoughts on like just the overlap between like customer data obviously is a big part of
Yeah.
marketing and activating that stuff, figuring out what's working. And when you're talking about data governance and AI strategy for the company, you're talking about the AI strategy, the data strategy. Hopefully these things are kind of like being combined there a little bit. But yeah, chat with us about like that overlap. What do marketing ops folks need to know about what is important in the data governance world in the next like 5-10 years?
Yeah, absolutely. I think customer data is a really great keyword because the problem with, or the challenge with customer data is that the creation of it is still highly manual, right?
Hmm.
Either the customers, for the first time signing up with their own data, that every human error is possible, right? You can mistype your own name or your address, whatever, right? Or a salesperson that is creating leads is also typing in the data manually into somewhere, and that creates a lot of data. And if the first record ever of customer data is already wrong, then you don't really have a comparison towards anything to say what is correct. And without that reference, data quality management is very difficult because you cannot even define what's correct looks like. Imagine
Right.
just your last name being now typed in the wrong way. And I don't have any reference about you else. How would I know what the correct last name of you is, right? And that is where a lot of the issues come from. So to avoid that human error, and that then cascades down across the whole data lifecycle, wherever it ends up in BI and whatever reportings, actually human data entry needs to be better. And that can
Mm,
have two sides. One is the typical training people to be more diligent, right? And giving them more guidance to do the right thing and just be more diligent about all of it. Or the second one, technology enabling him to do it right with guardrails, right? To have some type of a check, as in like, can you just check this is an unusual name, for example? Are you sure that this is the right one? Or your address might be in the wrong format. Could you check if this is actually what you mean? Like some kind of technological guardrails to actually help you, right? And then data quality management can be much easier because you start already with beta data from the very beginning, and then it cascades down to the other things. So, to any marketing operations person, right? Um, the more you can help the people that enter the data for the first time to already put in the right data, the less you have to deal with all of the rest and getting requests to clean up data again afterwards, because it was done already from the beginning in the right way.
mm.
So yeah, don't be the mob bucket. Try to give other people the mob first to already do it clean, right? You know what I mean?
Very cool. Yeah, no, great point there. And that's not even like you covered the manual data entry part there. There's a whole other bucket of customer data infrastructure
Right,
and how we're
right.
tracking that data, a bit more automated, but there's a lot of errors
That
and
is also
issues
true,
there.
yeah.
And we unboxed the whole like privacy discussion there. And so, yeah, we don't need to unpack that there because I want to ask you about like this whole like AI replacement
Mhm.
of jobs. Like a lot of folks there's like this opportunity and excitement with AI, but there's a ton of FOMO and like fear around like, am I falling behind on stuff? Like, is my job going to be replaced? Like, am I really adding value? Should I be doing this or should I be doing that? And one of the roles that's really interesting with this whole topic of replacement is analysts and specifically folks that are focused on like BI and reporting. A lot of folks think that like some of the jobs most at risk for AI disruption in like tech are a mix of reporting and BI role. And I think that like the front end dashboard and data viz part of this is already a lot easier and that the space has changed a ton over the last couple of years. NLP, natural language processing, is allowing folks to like interact with their data, like have a chat
Yeah,
experience. Non-SQL experts can finally like ask plain English questions to their data and build pretty quick dashboards.
right.
Um, there's a whole other category of like recommendations from pattern detection. There's like predictive engines now. I'm less convinced that some of these tools are going to be able to like help too much with the data prep and the modeling, the pipelining side of things. But what are your thoughts on like everyone saying that, analysts are one of the jobs most at risk of being replaced by AI?
Yeah, I think that's for sure. It's too much of a generalization, right?
Yeah.
Because I feel like that is describing as if analysts are only writing SQL statements and getting tables out and sending it to stakeholders, where in reality, of course, there's a lot more there, right? And we all know it's like, even just tell me what the business problem is you're trying to solve. Coming up with the query itself takes a lot of thinking work and communication work to even get there, because you need to first know what you're even looking for, right? And then find the right tables and then generate it and so on, right? I think writing queries, creating dashboards might get easier in the future, right? And we talk about vibe coding nowadays, right? A lot too, where you don't even have to just check the coding, where you just kind of do it with AI, and then you focus on the end and the overall bigger picture, right? Who knows where this is going, but um, that part is definitely going to be easier and less relevant for analysts, I would say. But then that puts more actually focus on enabling business users to use that conversational BI that you just mentioned, right? What I think a lot of people underestimate is, if you expect a business user to use a chatbot now to basically get metrics out of a database, right? Then the table doesn't on its own know with the technical fields what the data is you're looking for. What it requires is the semantic layer, and what it requires is all of the contextual information captured in the knowledge graph, right? And that knowledge graph and layer needs to be maintained and defined first by someone, right? And this is also where my prediction kind of goes. I feel like that a lot more people of analysts, they will become translators in a different way. They're not translating data into insights anymore, but they're translating business language into table structures and semantic statements to enable then the business users to use chatbots more in the future. So all of that is just shifting a little bit of responsibilities, but it requires a similar mindset and a similar skill set still.
Very cool. Yeah, Martech is hard enough to keep up with these days, but you mentioned a ton of different technology there with the semantic layer and data management, and the data landscape is moving probably faster than Martech, from data warehouses to data lakes to data mesh to data fabric, and you mentioned semantic layer there. Real time dashboards are popping up, and a lot of folks are talking about data observability and the interlap with marketing there. Can you help us like bring clarity to where we've been with data management and where we're going with customer data management? Is it fair to say that the trend is moving away from monolithic architectures that are like platform based, all in one tools, more towards a composable distributed system with a lot stronger governance, more control, more automation, more self serve capabilities with point solutions? A lot of orgs are implementing like a hybrid of the two and from multiple paradigms. Like, what are your thoughts there?
Absolutely. I think that is a very valid assessment of the current trend. I mean, we started all with like data warehouses being very central, right? And everyone had to basically get data from there, and you had a central data team that was servicing everyone to do it. And that is shifted into more of a data lake, which meant that it's still centralized but unstructured. So people, to get it, they needed to structure it for their own reasons. You started decentralizing a little bit. And now with data mesh or data fabric or whatever, you kind of start decentralizing even more, right? We talk about self-service, meaning that all of data is just there somewhere, but everyone needs to create their own efforts, make their own efforts to actually make it usable for their own purposes. And the main driving force behind all of that is because um, it became more and more of a bottleneck, right? The centralization was good at the beginning to have the expert there, but now that all of the business functions want to use data
Mhm.
quicker and for more timely decisions, they cannot all just wait for a central data team to do it all for them, right? That makes them become empowered, and they need to be able to do it on their own. And balancing basically the scalability of everyone can using it and being able to use it quickly and for the right things, versus then having guardrails on there to not do anything illegal or to do it in a way that's consistent, right? That is the key here. And it's not only the data world that is like this, right? In the software world, you have microservices that need to be governed in a certain way as well. And even in AI now, right? The same paradigm will come again, where probably you have a central AI innovation team right now in many places. Then all of a sudden, all the business functions have AI experts and want to do their own thing because it's quicker that way. So we kind of have to go through the same evolution again, maybe a little bit faster since we learned from data now how it should work. But this is kind of the direction where it takes. Yeah, and that actually, in return, means that being a data expert alone without the domain association is not good enough anymore, right? You
Mm,
need to be a data expert and a business expert as well to be able to actually support any business functions in the right way. Because chances are you're not going to sit in a central data team anymore in the future. You're going to sit in a domain or a business function, and you need to be able to keep up with them, actually.
very cool. I feel like the role of the marketing operations person or the person like deploying some of this AI tech with all the changes in data management, it's so important to collaborate with the data governance team.
Right.
That oftentimes like we'll sit at different parts of the org, but I love that like you're combining the two functions together because something we chat a lot about on the show around like AI agents and orchestration is like what is going to be the future layer of AI orchestration. Like every single Martech vendor is recalibrating their value proposition right now to say, we have an AI agent, turn
Right.
on our AI agent, use our AI agent. And in a couple of years, we're seeing it already. Every single tool in your stack is going to have an AI agent.
True.
And so the marketing operations person is essentially going to become like an AI referee and decide
Right.
we're going to be turning it on for this tool, not for that tool. Our iPaaS is going to be our central orchestration layer, or maybe it's going to be something else. How can like the data governance team help marketing ops folks figuring out this mess, especially in enterprises when like all the marketers are going to be like, we want to turn on the agent for this tool and for that tool? Like, who's going to be owning like customer engagement AI agents when the sales tool is going to have it, the customer management tool is going to have it, the marketing automation, like, talk to us about your advice for this
Yeah, I
future
mean,
mess.
it's interesting because you ask about data governance, and I think the short answer to it would be, of course, that any governance team, right, would ensure that you're minimizing the risks, right? So whatever you
Yeah.
are launching, you have the right guardrails on it. If it's dealing with personal information, make sure it's not leakable or there cannot be any bad things happening to the data, right, that it's dealing with. But it's actually much more a service design problem or like a user experience problem, even, right?
Hmm.
Because if you think about a user coming and they has to face 10 different AI agents all of a sudden, which should be maybe one seamless interaction with you as a customer, then you're again back to what I said before with 10 campaigns in 1 week. You are overwhelmed, right? So it should be actually much more driven by, is that the right thing for our business? And is that actually helping our customers to be loyal buyers of our product or services? Than thinking, how can we launch more AI agents, right? If we root it back to what is helping us to be successful in a business and not just what is exciting to do and what is quick to launch, then I think the whole mindset can shift more towards end-to-end thinking, value thinking, design thinking, all these things to actually make it better. And that does not doesn't necessarily mean it's a governance problem, right? It's actually more of a how do we even manage overall our business processes and value chain with AI in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, so such a great point. Like thinking about the customer experience first versus
Yeah.
asking yourself, do we need to turn on the AI for this agent or that agent? Like start with the customer first, work backwards, and that'll help you
Exactly.
decide whether to turn it on in that tool or that tool. And yeah, great point on the PII, PHI side of things that data governance can come in and help marketers with. It's been a super fun conversation, Chucky. I got one more fun question for you, and then we'll ask our last question. You kind of talk about the one person data team a
Yeah.
few times in your book. I don't know if you've worn that hat yourself in your career, but there's a ton of overlap with the one person marketing
Right.
operation
Yes.
team, and many of the folks listening have been that sole marketing technologist. You're a big proponent of like balancing technical work with self promotion and
Yeah.
communication, and you recommend at least 30% of your time should be spent on communication and building a relationship with your counterparts. What are some of the best tips and strategies that you've come across to make the most of that 30% comms and relationship? Is it like quick coffees with random people? You dedicate like your Mondays to do it? Like, what does that look like in terms of practical tips?
Yeah. I think there's many ways of doing that, but the most important part I realized that is to pay attention that you're still authentic, right? And by authentic, I mean um, be out of your comfort zone, but do not try to be a different person. Just try to be out of your comfort zone.
Mm.
What I mean by that is, for example, if you're an introvert and you hate being a public speaker for a lot of people at once, don't put as a target for yourself to just send newsletters to thousands of people or go to team meetings and town halls all the time to present there. Then do it the other way around and do one-on-ones and try to network with more specific individuals that have certain decision-making power or influence in organization to then make it work. So whatever you prefer as your communication style, identify that communication style and then double down on it, because that makes you at least feel like it's not a chore, but it's something you enjoy doing, right? And then it's about how you communicate it. And that's a lot more about mindset, because if
Mhm.
for you to be able to communicate naturally the successes you have in your achievements, you need to acknowledge them as achievements and successes too, right? And oftentimes, especially in operational jobs, it feels like a lot of reactive firefighting. So you cannot actually describe what you're doing every day. It just feel like, oh, I'm just doing it with a bunch of different things, and I don't know what the hell I'm doing every day, right? But that is not something you can do when you're networking, right? You cannot just go to a random person and say, I don't know what the hell I'm doing every day, right? So trying to boil it down again, to see the patterns, see what you're actually doing. Maybe the firefighting itself has a pattern, or above the firefighting, you identified a way how to quickly solve problems. Even that is an achievement, right? So see the achievements, talk about it in your own authentic way. That is the way how you can actually make meaningful connections with people. Yeah.
Such a great answer. I love so many things about that answer. I feel like sometimes you look at your day like, oh, what did I do today? What did I accomplish? And it's like, well, I fought a bunch of fires. I helped a bunch of people do something, but I didn't move the needle on any of the projects that I wanted to do. I closed 3 tickets and I made a couple people happy, but yeah, I closed
Exactly.
fires. Oh,
Yeah.
Tiankai, this has been super fun. Really appreciate your time. We'll link out to your book. But I got one last question for you. You're a data leader, obviously AI strategy director, a team leader. You're an accomplished author and speaker. You're also a board member. But you're also a musician and a rapper, an avid sci-fi book enthusiast, and
Yes.
a silly dad of 2 as well. One question we ask everyone on the show is, how do you remain happy and successful in your career? And how do you find balance between all the stuff you're working on while staying happy?
Yeah. I think there's two sides to it. One is I try to be less negative, and that means I am conscious about what I have under my span of control and what I don't, right? If bad things are happening to me and I cannot control it, then I shouldn't be bothered by it, right? I cannot control it or change it anyway. But if I can change it, I do everything in my power to make it better. And then at least I tried, no matter what the outcome is, right? And so turning it into solution, basically mode rather than problem mode is one key how I stay or how I keep negativity out of my life. And the positivity, I think, is actually, I feel like a habit that I created for myself. And
Mm.
those are small things, like every day in the morning, look at my calendar and see what I'm looking forward to, right? Today, in this case, it was recording this podcast episode with you, right? So I had the whole hours before this conversation to be happy because I was looking forward to something, right? And
Nice.
on a bigger scale, you look forward to vacations, for example. You look forward to your kids having milestones in their lives potentially, or everything else in your life, right? But having something to look forward to is, I think, a big driver to be positive, because then everything else matters less because you're focusing on something that is a little bit further away. So no matter what happens, at least you have this, right? The good thing that you're looking forward to. So that's
Very
how I
cool.
stay fun.
Love it. It sometimes is the thing that you're looking forward to, opening back the sci-fi time travel book
Yeah,
that you're reading.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Right on.
Any cool books that you're reading right now, or sci-fi books you want to recommend to folks?
Not, I mean, not right now, but I mean, we talked about Here Now and Then, right? That is the book that we recently just chatted about. We mentioned also Dark as a Netflix series. It's really good about time travel, I would say. My what I actually want to do is I'm a big Back to the Future fan, right? Of the movie series itself.
Hmm.
And I know it launched on Broadway as a musical, but I haven't actually watched that musical yet.
Nice.
And I really want to see, because I hear there are original songs in there that were obviously not part of the movie, but I haven't really heard them or seen them live yet. So I kind of want to explore that and experience that. Because as you mentioned, I'm a musician too, right? And if I could bring time travel and music together, that sounds amazing to me. Right.
Is there a future book in store for us where you're combining data and time travel?
Oh, I would love that. I mean, the easy answer is something like a backup solution sounds already like cover. Isn't like what MacBooks do to
Yeah,
back up the
yeah.
data already?
Yeah,
No,
I
but
love that.
that's a good point. Yeah, let me think about that. That's a great idea.
Yeah,
Right? There's something,
take
maybe even something with AI agents in there, right? So an AI agent that travels back in time and
definitely. I've actually joked about this on other podcasts that like one of my dreams is to write a sci-fi novel about time travel, and the main protagonist is a marketing operations person.
yes,
And they go back in time, and like in the past, like there is no Martech, like they're
that is
working
so
like
true.
admin ages, and then they go to this year and they're discovering automation for the first time. And maybe in the
Yeah,
future there's a couple tools that like still hang around, and the whole discussion about like what is going to be Martech in 10, 15 years. And I don't know, maybe there's something there, but plug your book, Chunky, because I read it, I loved it. As
thank you so
someone that
much.
interacts a lot with data professionals, I got a ton of value from it, learned a lot from like the collaboration side of things, obviously like the human part of working with data teams. But yeah, plug the book. Why should folks read it?
Yeah, absolutely. So my book is called Humanizing Data Strategy. And basically the premise or the main reason why I wrote it even is because I realized most of data issues in organizations are rooted in human issues, right? A lack of communication, a lack of collaboration, a lack of competence, right? And this is what I'm trying to counteract with by introducing a framework of the 5 Cs, which are competence, collaboration, communication, creativity, and conscience. And to each of them, there's a list of or a bunch of different experiences that I share or different practical advice nuggets, I call them, right? Where basically people can maybe see if that works for them and can apply it better. The whole idea is just to have a more people-centric data management and data strategy in place and not do technology first, but actually people first, because at the end it's the people that are using the data and that are generating value with it. And that should really be the key. Plus, the cover looks really awesome. I would just say that is the main reason why you should buy it. It's very colorful and cool, so that's the main reason you should buy it.
The cover is awesome. Definitely stands out. I saw your recent post where you probably use ChatGPT
Yes,
to do like the
the
bookstore
bookstore.
version. They're all in there. Yeah, but yeah, I love the book because it is like very much in tune with the mission of our podcast, the humans behind Martech, the humans
Absolutely.
behind data teams. And so thank you for writing it. Thank you for being with us today. It was super fun. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
So I recently got my hands on the 2025 AI and Marketing Performance Index. This is research conducted by Growth Loop and Ascend2. They surveyed like 300 plus senior marketers across North America. And the report showed this really interesting disconnect between the hype around AI and the real world that marketers are working in today. A lot of teams still struggle with things like performance and speed. In the report, you'll discover things like how teams are leveraging AI within their current marketing cycles, from audience segmentation to insights, how marketers think about the AI and human partnership within their existing stacks, and the biggest hurdles marketers face with adopting AI and ways that they're overcoming them. Grab your copy at go.growthloop.com/report. The #1 conference for marketing ops and revenue ops professionals is back again this year. Block off your calendars from October 27th to the 29th in Anaheim, California. Grab your tickets at mopsapalooza.com while you enjoy some of the highlights from last year.
This event is legit.
Mopsapalooza is different because it's a practitioner's event. Everybody learns from each other.
It's not a bunch of sales pitches.
This is the users community.
This year, we had over 300 submissions to speak. The sessions were selected and voted on by every single one of you. marketing ops isn't just marketing. It's about so much more than that.
It's about getting inspired by each other to drive impactful change.
And when MoPros are fully aligned with broader business goals, we become the true driver of growth.
It is going to be an exciting few years ahead, and I really do believe that marketing ops is going to be at the absolute center of this.
See what's going on in the industry. You want to be on top of your game, this is the conference to come to.
It's the place to be. It's easily the best conference that you're going to go to all year.
Community is completely next level.